Cam Rising and Brant Kuithe silenced their critics with a fantastic season debut. Both players had historic nights as the Utah Utes started off their season with a victory, defeating the Southern Utah Thunderbirds. What did we think of the offense, the defense, Isaac Wilson's debut? We got a lot to discuss because Utah football is back, baby. All that and more coming up on Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you are an everydayer on this show, thank you so much. And if you want to become an everydayer, you can like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you on YouTube in the comments, as well as you can rate and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We are available wherever you get your podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy fixes tired fast with zero sugar and convenient portable size. It's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. You can go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, no spaces, to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. You can go to 5hourenergy.com today. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. And on today's show, we got a Utah football game to talk about. And man, what a performance it was by the Utah Utes. Coaches always preach like being perfect. And I know Kyle Whittingham in his press conference mentioned there was some sloppy things they want to clean up. And sure, Utah wasn't perfect, but I mean, 49-0. There's only so many things you could say, and people could say, "Well, it was an FCS opponent." Like, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. Is you're supposed to shut them. You're not even supposed to shut them out. I mean, that's an unrealistic expectation in some ways. Like for when your backups aren't even giving up touchdowns, that's where it's incredible. And this Utah team was just incredible tonight. So we got to talk about the offense, the defense, Isaac Wilson's debut. There is so much to discuss about Utah's first performance, but there's only one place to start. And that's the return of both Cam Rising and Brant Kuithe, two of the most decorated players in Utah's history. When you look at what they've helped Utah accomplish, from Pac-12 championships to some of the best seasons in Utah history have included Brant Kuithe. Look back to 2019 and 2021. Got hurt, of course, in 22. Cam Rising got hurt in the Rose Bowl. Didn't get to see either of them in the 23 season. And man, did they remind us right away how much we missed having them inside Rice Eccles Stadium. Both of them were just spectacular. I mean, Cam, 10 for 15, 5 touchdowns, a career high. I remember looking that up in the offseason, being like, all right, what is Cam's career high in touchdown passes? It's 4. It's like, okay, I want to keep that in mind, but you never know like when it's actually going to end up coming up. And Cam was like, no, it's going to come up right now because he had over 250 yards passing, and once again, just 5 incompletions. He was incredible. And one of his first incompletions came on the very first play where it was a pressure broke in from Spencer Fano, got beat inside on a spin, and there was pressure and Cam missed it. And you're like, okay, still getting settled in, learning to feel the pressure and everything. And then even that same drive, I remember he completed a pass to Money Parks. It was Money Parks' only catch. It was a 4 yards, but Money had to slow his momentum down, and it was even behind him. And you're like, okay, Cam's still getting settled in a little bit. But man, once he did, and even like I said, this settled in is him. One of those was completions, and the other was pressure broke in on him, and he was in a bad spot. But Cam was remarkable. I mean, the passes both times to Dejon Stanley, absolutely pinpoint. And I will say as well, credit to Andy Ludwig for this offensive game plan. It was incredibly impressive. There were a lot of people who were doubting Andy Ludwig last season. I understand why. Wasn't always pretty with this offense. But I think so much of that was we know who Kyle Whittingham is. He wants to win. And he thinks the best way to win is to not take chances on offense. In many ways, he's right too. But there have also been games where that strategy has obviously bit Utah in the butt. So either way, last year, Utah, they had their hands tied behind their back offensively because they couldn't do certain things because they didn't want to turn the ball over. But they trust Cam so much that they open everything up. So they let things rip, and man, did they work successfully, whether it was bomb after bomb to Brant Kuithe or Dejon Stanley. Also, if you had Dejon Stanley being the first player for this Utah football team to score a touchdown on the season, I don't know if he would have been in my first 10 picks, genuinely. And that's no slight against Dejon. That's just when you mention all of the guys, it takes a while till you get to the 4th string running back. But when the 4th string running back has a number type of 4, 4-star speed. That's where he can't be discounted because both times he just dusted the Southern Utah linebackers. And those are great plays as well, kind of like little rub routes. I would say more rub than a pick play personally, but you have the receiver coming inside to where it creates that collision so that he's able to go free, and you're just not going to be able to run with him when there's that split second of contact that defensive backs and receivers going to collide into each other. So love to see Dejon Stanley get loose. But back to Cam Rising. He was just so dialed in, did a great job figuring out, okay, where can I go with the ball? And you know what else you got to say about Cam Rising? You can take Cam Rising, or I'm trying to figure out how I want to word this. We heard a lot, right? Cam Rising is going to not run as much. He's going to play it safer. He's going to not take as many risks. You can all say that, and that all sounds good. But at the end of the day, when the ball is snapped, Cam Rising is going to be Cam Rising. We saw that tonight. He had a first scramble on the first drive where they left him open and he rolled out to the left. And you can tell he's a little slower, I think, than he used to be, but such a smart runner. Still wish he would slide. I don't know what the reasoning behind that is. He just kind of awkwardly falls sometimes or just like throws himself into guys so he can easily go down. But Cam's a football player. He loves the contact. He loves all of it. And it was funny the moment where they called the timeout after he scrambled one time. And you can see Kyle Whittingham was walking on the ESPN Plus broadcast. He was like looking for Cam and he found him. And it looked like he was mad at him. And then he was also laughing because I think there's part of him that he totally understands why Cam does it, right? That's the best play that's available. Like, hey, no one's open. I'm going to run and get 4 yards. But Kyle Whittingham is looking at it like, who cares about the individual battle of this play? The season is a marathon, and Utah is obviously prioritizing the marathon over an individual play. So was really impressed with Cam overall. Got Dorian Singer involved, of course, and Brant Kuithe was remarkable. I mean, Brant is so good. I mean, are you kidding me? 3 of his 4 catches went for touchdowns. He's a monster. That touchdown where the 4 guys all collided with him. I mean, it's just best tight end in the nation stuff. I don't even know what else to say. I can't believe he somehow stayed up off that too. He's such a great route runner, changes direction so well. Fantastic hands. He's a veteran, been doing this since 2019 at a high level, and he ain't going to slow down at all this season. So Cam and Brant were absolutely remarkable. Porter Larson put it out there that Cam Rising moved into 4th all-time in Utah passing touchdowns leaders. He crossed over 50 tonight, so he's at 51. He is 3 behind Travis Wilson. Brian Johnson's ahead of him at 57. Scott Mitchell's still up there at 69. Cam will become the all-time leading passing touchdowns guy, and Brant will become the career touchdowns receptions leader. He's got 19 right now. Just needs to get to 25 to get to where Brian Rowley is. So loved what I saw of this Utah offense tonight. I mean, just great play calling. Cam Rising was firing on all cylinders. Took what the defense gave him, found guys. He didn't look like him, and Brant showed no signs of rust for neither one of them. I've said this before on the show, but Tom Brady had played football more recently than both of those guys. So for them to look that good, I know it's an FCS opponent, but that's what you're supposed to do against an FCS opponent. So love seeing them go to work. Dejon Stanley be involved. Dorian Singer making his first grab. Were some surprises on offense, though. And there wasn't one area that I find slightly concerning. Those of you who listen to the show won't be surprised by this frequently. And also want to talk about the Utah defense because that was not concerning. But also the injuries, obviously concerning that the Utah defense did deal with. So still a lot to dive into on today's Locked On Utes as we continue to break down a spectacular season opening performance from Utah. And we're going to continue to do that. But first, want to talk with you all about our great friends at Factor. Feel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. You can meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. And you can make a number of meals. How about 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, and you'll have a new flavor to explore. You can make your day delicious. From breakfast to dessert, stay fueled up with easy, nutritious options. You can keep kitchen time to a minimum. Factor meals are ready in 2 minutes. That's right. Just 2 minutes. Sounds like about as long as it would take Utah to complete an offensive drive, right? There's also no shopping, prepping, cooking, or cleaning with Factor. You can head to factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50. It's all lowercase, no spaces, Locked On College 50, and that is with 50, not spelled out. To use code Locked On College 50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code Locked On College 50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. You can head over to Factor today and start eating healthier and saving time in the kitchen as well. Also, want to talk with you all about another sponsor of our episode of Locked On Utes. It's our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time. Your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. You can keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All righty, keeping it rolling. We're going to talk about the defense in 1 second. I covered what the offense was able to do, and they were overall, they were very good. Good to see a couple of different guys in running back, right? Deshaun Stanley has to play. Kyle Whittingham said that at his press conference. His speed's just too much. I know he wasn't included in those top 4 guys originally, but he's going to be on that field a lot. Mekhi Bernard looked pretty good. Mike Mitchell getting his first touchdown. Got a key fourth down conversion for Utah. And then the very next run had like a 9-yard run and like totally fumbled the ball. You could tell it was his first carry, and then it bounced back up to him, thankfully. But we know how big Utah is on not letting that happen. So I'll have to do a better job taking care of that. I also thought Jalen Glover looked really good tonight. All the Utah backs looked really good. But there's one offensive position we haven't talked about. I guess really quickly on receivers. Oh, the receivers look good. I think they did their job. Darren Zipper. We can talk about Isaac Wilson in a little bit, but like Zipper flashed genuinely. I thought he had some really nice moments. You're telling me the future of this Utah receiver room, if it was Darren Zipper, Tayshawn Lyons, Jerome Miles, maybe even, I would be very, very excited about that. But one last position on the offense. And I think it goes back to something we actually talked about with this Cam Rising and Brant Kuithe. I think we all thought it would be like good to have this Southern Utah game, even the Baylor game at home, and then the Utah State game, because it's before the Oklahoma State game, right? Because it's kind of like you're ramping up, getting better until you have a big test. We thought that'd be good for Cam and Brant to just reacclimate themselves to playing. I don't think any of us expected Cam and Brant to play poorly tonight, but I don't think anyone expected Cam and Brant to have record-breaking performances like they did tonight. Cam had a career high in touchdown passes in his first game. We haven't seen him in years. So I don't think that I feel confident saying no one exactly thought that was going to happen, right? So we knew they'd be good. We didn't know they'd be this good. And we thought it'd be nice for them to have those ramp-up games to get ready for the big test that's going to be at Oklahoma State and Stillwater. But there's another position group that this ramp-up is even more important to, and that is absolutely the offensive line. They had some really strong moments tonight. Overall, I think they did play well. They are clearly still growing and acclimating in their new positions. Caleb Lomu is still settling in. I thought Caleb Lomu was pretty good overall. I did not notice Jaron come tonight. I'd spoken in the past last year about how I thought at times he had his struggles. I thought he was pretty good. Michael Mokafisi, and I need to go back and watch the film. I'm just talking about this after the game. Need to go back and watch him as well. But I did notice multiple times where Spencer Fano got beat, and they did talk about it on the broadcast tonight too. And his first game of the season, he's still getting settled in. I think he's going to have a really good year for this Utah squad. But there were some things that popped up again that reminded me of some of his issues he had at left tackle last year, where, overcommitting, leaning a little too far forward. And Tanoa Tongai had that as well, and he's still getting acclimated to his guard spot. There was one time there was a twist and he stayed with the defensive tackle way too long. So then you see that other guy come across and he's not able to regain his balance and get over. So I thought Fano and Tongai, once again, the offensive line was pretty good overall, but against better competition, like next week against Baylor, I'm very curious to see how this Utah offensive line does. I do think that Cam will probably get sacked at least once, if not twice next week, because you see I mentioned the very first play of the game, Spencer Fano gave up a pressure. So there are still things that need to be figured out along the offensive line, but they had a good game overall. Those are minor things, and excited to see how they do against Baylor coming up. So the offense was amazing. How was the defense? I mean, they were probably even better, right? Let's look at some halftime stats for when it was a 35-0 Utah versus Southern Utah lead. Utah had 339 yards of total offense. It was pretty good. But how about the fact that Southern Utah only had 85? They had 49 yards in penalties, 8 penalties at halftime. They had 30 passing yards. They only had 6 more rushing yards than they had penalty yards in the first half. Offensive line were false starting. That is the Rice Eccles Stadium effect. We've seen that time and time again where teams come into the stadium and they're simply just not ready for the noise and volume overall, right? Too. So also the penalties ended up being 13 penalties against Southern Utah for 78 yards and 6 for Utah for 55. So this Utah defense was electric. When you're looking at who were the best players on this Utah defense tonight, I thought the defensive line was spectacular. Keanu Tanavasa in particular, the broadcasters could not stop talking about him because of how good he was. He is so explosive on the interior. He can eat up double teams and shed them quickly, but he's also a prominent pass rusher too because he can win one-on-one as an explosive 3 technique. And Junior Tafuna may not be, he's more of your nose tackle, like plug things up, but he does play off the nose position often too as well. But he's another guy. He's just spectacular. I mean, there were multiple times where he drove offensive linemen into the quarterback's lap, and another guy who just gobbles up double teams. Connor O'Toole looked really good. Logan Fauna looked really good. Van Fillinger had 2 sacks. I think he only had 3 last year, if I remember the stats correctly. And he talked about how he battled injuries and didn't feel like himself. And that is 1000% what we got to see. Was he looked like himself, played like himself. So special day by this Utah defensive line. Southern Utah just did not have time to be able to drop back and do anything that they wanted to do. And that's why you saw Barry 6 for 11. Barron was 1 for 7. No matter who was at quarterback, no one had the necessary time, right? No one on Southern Utah had over 50 yards, as in the only Barry had 50 yards passing, 54 yards. Lamson, 66 yards 44 yards rushing. Bales Jr., 42 yards receiving. I mean, there was nothing to be had tonight. And that's just because of how good the pass rush was. The defense in general, right? When Lander, Barton, and Karene Reed are flying around. And how about both those guys being named 2 of the best 5 to 10 linebackers in the nation, if I remember the correct stat there. So loved what I saw out of them. Also, real quick aside, Jonathan Hall made like 1 or 2 tackles in this game. I just think he's going to be an awesome linebacker for this Utah team next year. It's only game 1. We got a long time to go till we get to next season, but I'm incredibly fired up about Jonathan Hall's future. I think he is just a physical presence of safety that this Utah team is lucky to have, or linebacker, excuse me, that this Utah team is lucky to have there too. So Lander looked good. Secondary, pretty much no separation. Only once or twice did Utah defensive back really get beat in this game. So Smith Snowden's name was barely called. Maya Vaughn was outstanding in coverage. Teo Johnson, Alakai Gilman. This Utah, Morgan Scally, the game plan, this Utah defense stepped up. They're the more talented unit on the field, and they more than delivered their end of the bargain. Unfortunately, one obviously crushing note for Utah is the terrible injuries that we saw. Kenan Johnson as well as Aliki Vaimahi. Both those guys suffer. And Coach Whittingham said that, they're not sure on the severity, but neither one's looking great right now. Both those would be absolute losses for Utah. Johnson was a huge get for this team in the transfer portal. Georgia Tech transfer who's played a lot of college football and was playing well tonight until he was forced to exit the game. Vaimahi looked explosive, did some really nice things, and was clearly the 3rd best defensive tackle on this team right now. I don't know if it's because of injuries, but we did not see Simote Pepa or David Fotu. Instead, for Utah, we ended up seeing it was John, Liana, and Dallas Valakai. I apologize if I butchered both of those names. Those of you who tuned into the ESPN Plus broadcast tonight we're probably used to hearing Utah players' names butchered several times. And it's very hard to do what those guys have to do, like flying, getting familiar with these teams, learning all these names, learning all these rosters. It's not easy, I'm just saying. But there were a few times I was like, oh, that's not quite right. Anyways, so crushing injuries there. How does Utah replace those guys? I think a D tackle, once Fotu and Pepa are back, I think those will be the main guys. And then mention the 2 backup defensive tackles that got a lot of run tonight for Utah. As for Kenan Johnson, Coach Witt already mentioned you could see Teo Johnson go back to corner and then put Nate Ritchie at safety because they just feel better about the depth with him there. But Cameron Calhoun did get in and did some really nice things. A former 4-star from Michigan who just transferred into the team. So no matter who's out there for Utah, I feel I feel really good about it. The Utah, because we'll talk about Wilson and Loner in a moment, but like the starting group for Utah, they looked fantastic tonight. They're stacked, and they're not going to do this to Baylor next week, right? Like it's going to be a better game against Baylor, but I don't know how you can leave this game not feeling incredibly fired up by Utah, not just doing what you're supposed to do, but just absolutely dominating in every phase pretty much. So I'm incredibly fired up about how this Utah defense looked and the Utah offense as well. Great effort by them. And it's because both those units played so well in the first half, they didn't really have to give it too much of a go in the second half, that we got to see Isaac Wilson, his long awaited Utah football debut, finally arrived. Had some good moments, had some bad. Let's talk about what it all means for his future as the backup quarterback for this team. We'll be diving into that in one moment. But first, we got to talk about our friends at 5 Hour Energy. You can grab a 5-hour energy shot that gives you the feeling of alertness and energy you need to get in the zone. Whether you're like me and trying to do a podcast at night after a game, or just trying to get through the workday, 5-hour energy is here for you. They have 0 sugars and convenient portable sizes. It's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-hour energy website has flavor galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There's a flavor for everyone, and you can try them all. On the site, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You can choose the flavors, and it's delivered right to your front door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5, and then hourenergy.com, and get some 5-hour energy products today, you can use my promo code Locked On CFB, excuse me. Utah will be in the CFP, but this code is Locked On CFB to receive $20 off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. You can go to 5hourenergy.com today to get your energy boost. All righty. Closing this one out, let's talk Isaac Wilson. We thought we'd see Isaac Wilson this game. And we also even kind of predicted on the show, we'd only see Cam in the first half. That ended up being the case. Cam came out and had already taken his pads off. That's got to be a great feeling. Just like going to a football game, balling out so well in the first half that you already undress, or get to dress out, take your pads off. That's a fantastic feeling, I'm sure. So Cam got to do that. We didn't see Brant again too. So it's time for the backups to come in. And that, of course, includes Isaac Wilson. And he did get a little bit of run right before the half. It did not go well. Got pressured pretty quickly, made a poor throw, or actually pressured, then ran out of bounds, then had the interception. It was his first of 2 interceptions. This is a great learning game for Isaac Wilson. I think, I'm going to stick with what I said before. I think Utah can win with Isaac Wilson if it needs to. If Cam were to get hurt and Isaac started every game this season, Utah's obviously not winning the Big 12. They're probably going to have a hard time going into the Big 12 championship game, because you just see the difference between a veteran college quarterback and someone like Isaac Wilson, who is just learning the ropes, right? The second interception in particular, he was trying to force it to Caldara in the end zone when he had Loner wide open in the flat. It's got to go there. His pocket awareness is nowhere near what Cam Rising's is. So the pressure is even magnified when Wilson's in versus Cam, because when Cam's in, this was something I remember we saw with Bryson Barnes too. Cam has some fantastic pocket awareness, just the way he maneuvers, scrambles, knows when to take off, manipulates it. He's a master at it. And Isaac will hopefully get there, but not in his very first ever college snap. And I thought that was pretty evident too. So yes, had some missed throws, had some rough spots, but I also thought of some really nice moments. I mean, the touchdown pass to Caleb Loner, that's exactly late in the game after his second interception. That's exactly where that ball needs to go, on his outside shoulder, so that the defensive back can't get it. That was thrown perfectly. And it was great to see Caleb Loner get a catch, get into the end zone. He dropped that fade after he ended up pushing off a little bit. That's, it's kind of a ball don't lie, I feel like, in terms of like, hey, he totally pushed off to get open. But love to see how much Caleb Loner was involved too, and very excited to see what his future holds with this Utah offense. I thought he looked pretty good out there when they needed him. So I'll be interested to see how much we see him when the game is in the balance, even more so. Obviously, we'll see a lot of Brant Kuithe, Dallin Bentley, Landon King, and Carson Ryan in certain packages, but serious about Loner now, because he did get a good amount of run. So Curious with that, but once again, with Wilson, he had some nice scrambling moments. He hooked up with Zipper a few times. His very first completion was to Tayshawn Lyons. That's something you got to love with Lyons' high ceiling and potential too. But of the receivers outside of course, Dorian Singer and how good he looked, Zipper really popped to me once again. I think he's going to be really good for this Utah squad, and love that he's already getting reps and opportunity. But overall, I thought this was a great learning game for Isaac Wilson. If you had to say, did he play good or he had to play bad? If we're in an absolute world, he didn't play very well. But he had some really good moments throughout the game that lead me to believe he's going to be a good backup for this team when they need him to come in certain spots. And we've seen this a lot of times too, where quarterbacks throw interceptions early. You have to make those. There are some mistakes you just have to make in the game, in the heat of it, the thick of things, to learn and grow from. And I think that was what this was for Isaac Wilson in a lot of ways. So overall, just excited that he made his debut. A lot to learn and grow from for Isaac, but I think his ceiling is incredibly high. I think if he played this exact game tomorrow and he had the same chance to come in at half, I think we'd already see it. Or I should say next week, because he needs to watch the film first and go through all of that. But then I think we'll see a massive improvement the next time we see him. And who knows when the next time we see him? Maybe it'll be Utah State, and maybe it'll be Baylor next week, right? So that's what'll be fascinating to watch how it all plays out. So great to see Utah get a win. How fantastic was it to be back inside Rice Eccles Stadium, cheering on Cam Rising and Brant Kuithe? Truly, it must have been a pinch myself moment for all of you who were able to go there, because that is kind of like, whoa, like, it's 2024 and I get to watch this Utah squad absolutely shine. And that is what they did on this Thursday night, August 29th, to open the college football season. Utah football is back. It was great seeing the young guys get experience, watching the veterans ball, a dominating performance. And now the focus shifts to Baylor. Well, mostly the focus. We'll do a film breakdown the next time I come on to this show, but on Monday, and we'll talk about the game more in depth and look ahead to what Baylor did as well too. So there's still a lot to discuss as Utah, they're just getting going. So I can't wait for this season to continue to play out. We got a taste of Utah football, and I'm already hungry for more. And I know that you guys are as well. So thank you again for listening to this show. Make sure you like and subscribe. Drop your comments and just thoughts on the game in general below. Would love to see what you guys thought of it. What you thought of being there. How was the stadium Wi-Fi? I know that was the big thing that got added this week. So once again, thank you all for tuning in to today's edition of Locked On Utes. Utah takes care of business against Southern Utah. That's going to do it for game week number 1. Our focus shifts to game week number 2. We'll see you on Monday. Utah is a winner, and I hope you all have a fantastic weekend.